and welcome back to the Ideal Wealth Grower YouTube channel. My name is Axel Meyerhofer. I'm the founder of Ideal Wealth Grower and the host of today's episode. And as you have seen in previous episodes, we have kind of started a little bit of a series to get a little more in-depth on the first part of the name Ideal Wealth Grower, the word ideal. And it's not just ideal because we believe that investing in residential real estate, ideally out of state and ideally with a turnkey provider, is the best way to go. But it's also because ideal in and of itself is an abbreviation. So in previous videos, I spoke about the I for income and the D for deductions and depreciation, the E for equity and the A for appreciation, meaning like the increase in value. And so today in the last video of this series, I want to talk a little bit about what does the L in the word ideal actually stand for. And that L is a letter for the word leverage. And why is leverage in the context of out-of-state residential real estate investing important, but also in other kinds of real estate investing in general? And most of you who are actually watching this channel or finding this channel or finding this video will probably first have heard about it or understood it either from your parents or from your own experience when you got ready to purchase your first piece of real estate, whether that was a condo or an apartment or your first house or anything like that. Because if you really think about it, and the government is, by the way, actually strongly supporting that, if you really think about it, leverage means if you have only a small amount of money and that gets you into something pretty expensive, then that would in and of itself mean you're leveraging the amount of money to be able to enjoy something of higher value. So how does that look in practice? Well, let's just say you are looking for your first house, and it happens to be a house like a $200,000 house in a nice neighborhood with a garden and everything around it. And if you are a first-time home buyer, the government is actually interested to get you into your first home. And to facilitate that and make that easier for you, what they actually do is they say, okay, well, we have government-supported mortgage programs that allow you with down payments anywhere from like 3%, 5%, 10% to get into your first house. And what does that mean? That $200,000 house, if you had a 5% down payment, that would only require $10,000 for you to put down to get that house. Now, there are still some closing costs and legal costs and appraisal costs and stuff like that that might apply. But generally, to get the financing, if you qualify otherwise with a good credit score and income and all those things, you would get a mortgage for the remaining $190,000 if you had 5%, meaning $10,000 to put down. And then you pay basically your monthly payments. This would be typically for a 30-year mortgage. Now, there are special cases of leverage. For example, when you are in the military or in the government, you can work with a Veterans Association. Those are called VA loans or VA mortgages. And the way they work is basically that the government says, well, you probably don't make as much money as other people, so we want to give you a hand. And we know, because you're working for us, for the government, and we are supporting this program, that the pay will be there, right? So you have to have a minimum commitment. If you're only signing up for 1 or 2 years with the military, it wouldn't work. But if you have a longer term commitment, so the government knows you will be there, you are signed up, so therefore they also know you are entitled to your compensation. So it makes it very easy to say, okay, you don't really have to put a down payment. So VA loans are special in this case because they are 0% down and 100%, like the whole $200,000 can be financed. Now, basically the way this works is you are guaranteeing with your income and with your credit score and with everything that comes in and that the underwriters in the bank would look at, that you for yourself have that house that you're now buying and that you own. And the only thing, and you will be able to look at another video here on our channel where I basically made a video about why do you have to have mortgage insurance or MPI or PMI, that both these abbreviations in some cases. And that is because the government says, well, if the down payment is less than 20%, then you have to have insurance to ensure that in case you can't pay, that then the insurance steps in and pays. So this is typically not really that applicable when you do it for yourself, for moving in, for basically what's called owner occupied. You're moving into the property that you're buying. So there, the leverage is basically between a relatively small down payment and what you get from the bank to finance the property. And yes, you need insurance if what you put down is less than 20%. Now, if we transition this to our out-of-state turnkey residential real estate investing strategy, it gets a little bit different, but only in certain ways. That's why I wanted to have this introduction. So we don't really want to have any additional costs, and it's not very advisable, and most lenders don't want to do it anyway, to have less than 20% down payment. But as you know, in fundamental terms, what we're always saying is the deal, or whether something is a good deal or a bad deal, is in most cases made at the time of purchase. And that's why I'm always preaching that you want to look for the performance of the property. And that means you want to find, let's say, $100,000 properties in an area where you can get $1,000 rent, or $125,000 property where it's realistic to get $1,250 rent to start. Now, rent can increase over time, and that's fine, and that helps you with your passive income. But as a starting point, that is a good criteria to say, is this a good deal? Is this a good purchase? And also, you will know when we're talking about leverage that means you have your part of the payment to purchase the property, and then there's the lender or the bank with their part. And they naturally want to make sure that when they help you buy something, so you can apply leverage, that what you buy actually has the value, and that's why you need the appraisal. So a good deal would be, just to really go a little bit above and beyond what can be expected in this current environment, but a good deal would be if you, let's say, find $100,000 property from the turnkey provider, and they send out, or the lender sends out, the bank sends out an appraiser, and it appraises for $110,000. So from day one, there are $10,000 more value in this property than what you have to pay for it. And then when you think about it, you only need to put 20%, meaning $20,000 down. So for you, $20,000 down, you're immediately getting $10,000 additional value, which would be 50% basically return on your initial investment. So that would be great. Now, if you then also look that your property gets at least $1,000 in rent, you're probably having another $200 a month that are left over every month after you pay for everything. You add that up by 12, that's $2,400. If you think about it, $20,000 down, $2,400 in positive cash flow after everything has been paid. That's more than 10% on that initial $20,000 investment. So those are some of the reasons why would you even want to do a deal like that? Why do you even want to get into out-of-state turnkey residential real estate investing? Why should you even follow the strategy? Now, leverage is basically very similar if you think about it, like putting a lever on something that is heavy to be able to lift it up. And there are all kinds of, if you go on Google and you look at leverage and pictures about it, you typically always have a pivot point, right? So some little triangle looking thing on the ground, and you have the heavy thing on one end, and then a longer, as long as possible or needed, lever to push down with relatively limited force. And because of that pivot point, you can lift a relatively heavy object. Now, if you think of that heavy object to be the house, and instead of saying it's $100,000, it's, let's say, 100,000 pounds, right? What you want is that you be able to bring this 100,000 pound heavy house to balance by only putting $20,000 on your side of the lever. And that also goes into the overall calculation. What is the typical thing that we're looking for? The leverage, if you calculate it as a quote, is basically what we're aiming for is anywhere between 5-to-1 or 4-to-1. 5-to-1 would mean you put 20% down and the bank gives you 80%. 4-to-1 would be you put 25% down and the bank gives you 75%. In either case, that's the leverage. So the really beautiful part about it is you're doing the financing for your first, second, third, or however many properties you want to purchase overall for your portfolio. That leverage of 4-to-1 or 5-to-1 also means that you are allowed to keep 100% of the performance of the property. So when you think about it, let's say 20% down again and 80% from the bank. You put 20,000 down, the bank gives you 80,000. If that property gives you these $2,400 in positive cash flow at the end of the year, you're doing it for 12 months, you have now $2,400 in your pocket. Do you have to give 80% of that $2,400 to the bank? No, because you already paid the mortgage and the insurance and the property taxes and the property management and your vacancy reserve, your maintenance reserve, your capex reserve. So those $2,400 are the true performance of the property. And even though the bank gave you 80% of the money to even own that property, you get 100% of the profit. So I hope this makes it really understandable is, when you think about, you put one part, the bank puts 4 or 5 parts into the equation, and you get 100% of the whole thing into your pocket as profits. It's a super good deal. So being aware of leverage is very important. Now, one thing of caution I want to also say right now, and a lot of you getting into this whole residential real estate investing scheme or theme or interest or story, have probably, for the most part, not really seen very high interest environments. Now, I'm a little older and I have lived through times where interest rates were easily 8%, 7%, 6%, right? And so you actually have to really pay attention of what is the interest rate for the loan or for the mortgage that you're getting from the bank or from the lender. So right now we can, in our personal use, if you buy a house or you buy a condo or something like that, you can get mortgage interest rates somewhere between 2.5% and 3.5%. Unheard of, has never existed before, even for 30-year mortgages. If you go for an investment property, meaning you're not living in the property yourself, you typically have to add about another %. So it would mean 3.5% to 4.5% for investment properties, which has also never really existed like that before. Now, if you were to imagine for some reason the Federal Reserve were to start increasing interest rates by a few %, so that you can't get mortgages anymore for 2.5% to 3.5%, but let's just say it's between 5 and 6. And then your investment properties would be between 6 and 7. There comes a point where, yes, you have the leverage, but you may not have any positive cash flow anymore, because the more interest you have to pay, the more expensive the mortgage basically gets, and it might completely eat up your passive income. That's another reason why taking advantage of the situation right now is so important. And a lot of people say, well, Axel, does that really still make sense? Because prices of properties have increased so much in the last few years. And my point and my answer to that is, it makes sense as long as you pay most attention to performance. The house that used to cost $90,000 and was able to be rented for $900 is basically the same performance when it now costs $115,000, which is basically a 20% plus increase in value. But if you can still rent it for $1,150 a month, it's the same fundamental performance, and it will still work out. And you might even in that deal, and it sounds crazy, I know, but in that deal, if you really sit down and do the math, that house that cost $90,000 2 or 3 years ago, when you now get it for $115,000, but for a lower interest rate mortgage, you might not have more expenses for that slightly more expensive house than you had 2 years ago. So you might actually have a little more positive cash flow than before. And that's what we're in the game for. We want to accumulate passive income, positive cash flow, to reach our time freedom point, the point in the future where we no longer have to exchange time for money and make enough passive income so you don't have to go out and have a job or get any kind of other way of compensation other than the money that comes in left over after your rent, after you paid for everything. So it's really a matter of looking at, number one, the calculation, and most importantly, always making sure that you find really well-performing properties, like I have mentioned several times during this video. So then, as soon as you find a property like that, or a turnkey provider offers a property like that to you for purchase, then you want to use that leverage of 4-to-1, 5-to-1 to really get the maximum out of the deal. So I hope that was informative. That concludes basically going through all the different letters in the word ideal that make the word ideal out of ideal wealth grower. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're not already a subscriber, I would like to ask you to become a subscriber and ring the little notification bell so you get notified when we have more videos. And I also really like to ask you to share this video together with the other videos in the series so that people get a better understanding when real estate investors or people who educate about real estate investing, especially residential real estate investing, talk about what is ideal and why is it ideal and why does it pay you multiple different ways. Then go through this video series and you will find out why it's such a big thing. You get income from your properties, you get depreciation on your taxes, you can do deductions, you build equity by having the house and the house actually, or houses actually increasing in value, and you get appreciation over time, and you get leverage if you finance. So all those things together really make it a great thing to invest in real estate and building a legacy and building a portfolio. So be well, stay safe, and I see you in the next video.